Hello, guys. Wayne Walker here, your host. Hypno Lions Roar podcast with teeth, life transformations, and carnivore living. Today I'm covering two subjects, really interesting subjects. The first subject is concerning hypnosis, of course, but we're going to be talking about the primitive mind, the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. That's going to be an interesting topic to discuss. I think you'll recognize some things. And then the second topic is the system that we've been forced into, our government system, how we live, the farm, our animals, and why we do it. So let's delve into the primitive mind, the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. Now, this concept reminds of the primitive mind, refers to the most basic and ancient part of our brain, which is wired for survival. Now, this part of the brain, specifically the lymphatic system, is responsible for our automatic reactions to stress and danger, known as a fight, flight, or freeze responses. So let's take the first one, the fight. This response is triggered on our brains when we try to ward off danger by feeding it, to fight it. We stand our ground. Many times we fight because we have no way out. Usually a person, if they have a way out, they'll take it rather than fight. Some people triggered and they want to fight immediately. So it's often accompanied by an intense feeling of anger. Because when a person gets ready to fight, you find that they have to get themselves angry in order to fight. And you see this in boxing matches when they come together and they do the weigh-in and the guys get nose to nose with each other. There's a lot of anger there. They have to build themselves up in anger in order to want to hurt the other person. And it's a natural progression. If they came out there laughing and giggling and shaking hands, probably not going to have the right mindset in order to fight when times comes. So it's a really interesting dichotomy, I guess you could say. Okay, so now the flight, and this response is triggered by our brain to escape from the danger, trying to get away as quickly as we can, as far away as possible from a dangerous situation. The flight, it could be a person trying to talk themselves out of a fight. They're good with their words, but they're trying to deflect any way they can without having to actually fight. And even then, sometimes when people are forced to fight, they move into the freeze mechanism. They just don't fight. They've given up. They just stop. They don't retaliate because they feel that if they retaliate, it's going to cause more anger in the individual, and they just want to take the beating and get it over as quickly as possible. Okay, but the freeze mechanism is, and we've all experienced it. Well, for the most part, if you've ever been hunting or you've driven down country roads and there's a deer or a rabbit or a nocturnal animal in the middle of the road and the lights hit them, they freeze and they'll stand there and look at you. Maybe they can't see you because of the bright lights and it's just odd to them, but they just freeze. Many times in the wild, fawns, when there's danger approaching, they freeze and they lay down and they're just very quiet. They're just very still and they won't react. Hopefully they just kind of blend in to the surroundings so that until the danger passes, then they'll come out of it and take off. But the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism is an entryway into hypnosis. Okay, and what I mean by that is this: hypnosis, in order for hypnosis to take effect, there has to be a stressor, something that jolts a person into hypnosis. And that's what the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism does. And we've all seen it occur many, many times. For example, car chases. I always use this example because it's a classic example. So you're watching the news, and on the news they come in breaking car chase. Police are chasing the car, and helicopters in the sky. They've got cameras on it, and this guy, whoever it is, weaving in and out of traffic. Cops are right behind them. They've got cops in front of them. They've got more cops in front of them, cutting off access to the freeway to keep people out of the way and out of danger. And you sit there and you're watching this, and you may say to yourself, or you may say to somebody else in the room, says, why are they running? They know they're going to get caught. There's almost 100% chance that they're going to get caught ultimately. So why go through all of this? And then they do get caught. Maybe they crash their car. The cops put out spike strips across the road, taking out their tires, pit removal, whatever, pit maneuver. They got the person stopped. Now, they stop or crash, and then they get out and they start running, which makes no sense because cops have these little four-legged friends called dogs, and they're much faster than you can run. And if they get a hold of you, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. So you ask yourself, why are they running? They know they're going to get caught. So now they're caught, and they're in handcuffs, and they're coming back, and the cop asks them, why were you running? And they look at the cop and go, I don't know. Or they look at the cop and say, I was scared. Well, at that moment that cop got behind them and they knew they were going to get caught, they're going through their mind about all the reasons why they're getting stopped and what's going to happen. And maybe they've been in jail before. They don't want to go back. So all of this stuff here, and then boom, fight, flight, or freeze mechanism is tripped, and they're in flight. Okay. And then the cop tells them, says, we were just going to pull you over because of a wrong left-hand turn or whatever the case may be. Many times they've got warrants out for them, and that'll trigger it. Okay. But at that point, they are in fact in hypnosis, because if you ask them specific questions about while they're going down the road, did you notice this car, this, or this? And they go, no, I didn't notice anything. I was looking straight in front of me, because everything is focused to where they're going, and everything peripherally, they've lost track of it. They just ignored it. It's no different than an athlete putting themselves in the zone when they're getting ready to play the game, or a boxer when they get focused. Same exact thing. Okay. The freeze mechanism, it's self-explanatory. People just tend to stop where they're at and not retaliate. They get taken advantage of. Sometimes these people are more amiable in nature in terms of their personality, but that's how everything is triggered. And they too are in hypnosis at that point, because everything comes in and they become tunnel visioned. All right. And they don't see anything, hear anything, smell anything on the peripheral. And all of these things, everything that I just described, is all done subconsciously. They are not conscious at that point, because the conscious part of our brain is the logical part. And if you can prevent a person from tripping into the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism, many times logic will take over. Communication. Okay. Many times. I'm saying all the time. But way back when, these responses were critical for our survival. But they can be triggered in modern life due to perceived threats. Keyword being perceived. Your perception of a threat, my perception of a threat, could be worlds apart. But yet it's interesting that our laws are set up that if you break the law, you pay a price, as it should be. However, a lot of times these things are not within the grasp of the individual. It's like crimes of passion. Well, if you come home and you find your significant other doing the dirty with somebody else while you were supposed to be gone, they go into hypnosis because that anger thing is tripped, or that jealousy thing, or that hurt thing. It throws a person into hypnosis. And the peripheral, once again, you're acting on the primitive aspect of your subconscious mind. It throws you in there. Now, it's important to notice that these responses are not inherently negative. For example, to successfully escape a threat, your primitive brain will define your success as proof that you can take care of yourself, or that you've emerged empowered and capable and can handle what the world throws at you. So we perceive how we want things to be, how we want to be looked at. Sometimes these responses are triggered too frequently or inappropriately. They can lead to various health issues, a mental health condition, anxiety disorders. Therefore, understanding these responses and learning how to manage them is crucial for our mental and physical health. Okay. Now, there are times when the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism is triggered for a variety of different reasons, and sometimes inappropriately, because we don't have a handle on our own emotions. So the key to controlling the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism is understanding what it is and controlling where we get to that point. We all know somebody who has a hair trigger. Well, a person with a hair trigger, they are getting kicked into that fight, flight, or freeze mechanism by anger. That emotion, anger, it trips it. Jealousy, it can trip it. Feeling betrayed, hurt, any number of things. So they have a high emotional response, and it triggers that, and then they get into it, and it's hard to get out of it because you have to settle them down. So it's important that we learn that. And a lot of times when I work with my clients, that's what I'm working with them on, because anxiety, depression, and panic attacks are typically, the prelude to that is a fight, flight, or freeze mechanism that kicks them into that have that anxiety. And then once a person has anxiety, or it's tripped, or depression, or the panic attacks, then it's short-circuited and they jump into it immediately. So their emotional state is up and down, up and down, up and down. And they don't know how to control it. They don't know what's wrong with them. They go to doctors, they go to talk therapy, they get on drugs. None of that nonsense works. But hypnosis can help that a lot. And the reason being is because hypnosis with a hypnotherapist will put them into hypnosis and cut all of that stuff out, get rid of it, meaning that allowing the person to accept that that's what they want to do. And as long as they accept it while they're in hypnosis, then it becomes a natural part of them. And over a period of time, and when I say period of time, it could be a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We're not talking a long period of time here. Because once the subconscious mind has new ways of dealing with situations, then there's no reason to deal with the situation the way that it used to. Now, can you override that, or can a person override that? Meaning, can hypnosis fail? The answer to that is no. Hypnosis cannot fail. It can be overridden if the person wants to go back there, or if they ignore it, because once the subconscious mind has new programming and that feeling is triggered, then they either consciously, now we're talking a conscious thing, because the subconscious mind's number one priority is to protect you, and it's going to protect you any way that it can based on the data, life experiences, information that it has at its disposal. But subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between right, wrong, positive, negative, up and down. None of that. It's just information. So it brings that information to the conscious mind, where the conscious mind then focuses on it and makes a decision of what it's going to do. So that's a conscious decision. Okay. So once that conscious decision is made, they look at it and go, all right, well, yeah, I can do this and I won't have to do this, but I'm really pissed off and I'm just going to react the way that I used to. So the conscious mind can drag the subconscious mind back into and basically beat it into submission after time and time again, and they're back to their old pattern. So the question is, did hypnosis fail? No. They consciously made that decision that that's where they wanted to go, because the subconscious mind had the right programming. They just overrode it. So that's why when I interview people, I'm very careful of the clients that I take on. And I think I've mentioned this before. I reject anywhere from 10 to 15% of the people that come to me to become a client. And the reason being is because they're not ready for it. Because if I feel that they're not going to take this and grow with it, then why do it? Now, it doesn't mean I won't work with them next week or 6 months down the road or next year, which I've had people come back to me and say, okay, now I'm ready. Okay. Which I had actually happen. I had a phone call on Saturday, an emergency phone call from a past client that I had worked with his daughter, but I won't go into much detail with that. And that was a while back, but now I'll be working with him. So the key here is to understand your triggers, where your line in the sand is. Okay. Because once you cross that line in the sand, then that's what ends up happening. You go into hypnosis. Okay. And that's just one example of going into hypnosis. And I call it not on purpose hypnosis, because we don't know we're going into hypnosis. We don't know we're there, but you are. Okay. So if you have issues with that, then there's a way to overcome that and rewire your subconscious mind to where it supports you where you want to go. Because I find that with people, we all want to be better. We all want to have our best life, to be the best person, to be the best husband, father, son, whatever it is. We all want to be the best. But unless you change the programming and you continue to repeat the steps over and over and over and expecting a different outcome. And we've all heard the saying says, what is the definition of crazy, or is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. You have to change the program. You have to change your paradigm. And once that happens and it becomes a natural part of you, then You have new information, you grow past that, and it becomes a distant memory. It becomes a used to. I used to be this way. And many times, I know this is going to sound odd, but many times when I work with a person, I give them hypnotic suggestions that if they were to try to remember how they used to be, that they're not going to be able to remember that. Because why remember it? It serves no purpose. So I'm going to put that post-hypnotic suggestion in there to eliminate that, and then it becomes a fuzzy memory, and after a period of time, it just becomes gone. Just gone. They never go back to that again. And that's the value and the power of hypnosis. Okay? So I would love to hear any responses. You guys, I got my email on the notes here. Feel free to email me, ask me questions. I'd love to engage you. I hope this was interesting to you. I know I like talking about it and explaining it because it affects our lives in many ways. And even those of us with kids, young kids, you can watch this happen in real time if you know what to look for. And once you understand what you're looking for and you see it, you'll be amazed at the predictability of what's happening, because we're all predictable. Okay? All right. So let's move on to the next subject. Okay. Okay. So the system we've been forced into, and the system, when I say the system, I'm talking about the government system, how we have been forced into this box and how we're to live. And there's no escaping from it. Okay. The system that we're in was transitional from rural living to urban living. Back, go back and look at the 80s, somewhere around there. Industrial revolution was starting to take place. The world was getting smaller. Natural resources, raw materials were being shipped and moved across the country and in many instances across the world. So in order for that to happen, these businesses had to have employees. So they made it very easy for people to come off the farm of the rural living, move into the urban areas, and then there we go, starting to live by the clock. And when you have people in cities, they don't have the resources to get what they used to get in their rural life. Okay. Modern society, driven by economic, social, and technological changes, all of these things come into play. And then in the 20s or 30s, I can't remember right offhand, but the income tax was introduced, which prior to that, we had no income tax. We had taxes on people coming into the country in terms of raw materials and stuff from other countries. And that's how the government survived. That's how they funded the government. And then the local cities, towns, municipalities, whatever you want to call them, they had their own taxes and that to support their area. But for the most part, there was no government safety net for Social Security and so on and so forth. So we were forced into a system where we had to take part. You can't escape it. And that becomes an issue. There's many people, me included, that say, look, just leave me alone. I don't want anything from anyone. I don't need any help from the government, whatever it is. Just leave me alone. But that's not the case. You know, before you could raise chickens, and if somebody needed chickens and they had something that you wanted, the barter system, you just exchanged it, no harm, no foul. But you can't, well, legally, that is income and outgo. That's, you know, legally. And if you wanted to get technical about it, you're supposed to report that stuff. But used to, you could have a piece of land and you could work that land and provide everything that you needed by bartering, by selling off, or get a few dollars, or whatever the case may be. You could survive. But that's not the case today. Okay. Now, with what's going on today, with the urbanizing of more and more places, the economic shift, the monetary systems, technology. Okay. I mean, what we're doing here didn't exist 5 years ago, which is interesting. Okay. The rise of the industrialized world in the 19th, 20th centuries, factories, businesses, industries needed workers. Okay. Ford, the assembly line, created credit so people could buy, so his workers could buy the car. I mean, everything is created, and you get tied up into the things, and it'll drive you nuts. People want to escape that. All right. But the challenges of rural living are, some people are not cut out for it. But at the time, you either survived or you didn't. You know, rural life once offered opportunities for self-sufficiently through agriculture, land ownership. Economic changes made it increasingly difficult to sustain oneself outside of the urban areas. Although there's ways to do that. Technological advances, productivity also reduced the need for labor, resulting from rural unemployment. Farmers are automating. I live in an area here in South Texas, a lot of farmland, big equipment, GPS. They know what they're doing. They don't need a whole lot of people to run the operation. And then the issue with access to education and healthcare, other essential services was often limited in the rural areas, so that played a factor. So it's the balancing act. It's what do you do? Okay, and then you move into the monetary and government system. You know, the government wants more income. Now, here's an interesting thing. Now, today I'm recording this, what is March 17th, 24. Okay. And our country's in a big mess. Everybody wants something. And primarily it's the making of the government. So if you look at across the country, everybody a few years ago started hopping up and down and screaming about the minimum wage can't support a person, which the minimum wage was never designed or for supporting a person. It was, there is a entry point into the work world, young person. Okay, whether it was a fast food restaurant or working at, you know, a tire store part-time as a teenager, that's a minimum wage. That's what you get. It wasn't designed to survive or raise a family on. So you were tasked with increasing your knowledge, becoming a valued employee or a key employee, and that would move you past that system and put you into a realm of making more money to be able to support a family. But there are some businesses, I mean, if you look at a McDonald's or a Wendy's or Burger King or whatever, just one of the fast food restaurant, if they've got 20 or 30 employees at any given time in that restaurant to run the operations, they have shift leaders, they have managers, and they bump them up accordingly. You show up, you've not missed that, you do a good job, you represent my store the way I want it to be represented. I'd like to make you a shift manager or a manager. I'm going to give you a raise, and then, you know, a manager over the store, and you get more money. But those positions are limited. And if there's a person that's in that position, there's not a growth opportunity in that. So what are you to do? You just sit there and say, hey, I'm going to wait here until I make more money? That just doesn't make sense. You go out and you leave that, and you go out and you find another job and say, hey, look, I'm leaving my other job because there's no opportunity to grow. I'm this, and this, and this. And maybe they hire you as a manager. Or maybe you take that skill set that you've learned and you move on to a different industry, whatever it is. But now we move into the area of education. And is education the key? Used to, they say, okay, you go to college. Well, used to you had to qualify for college. And there was limited spaces for college. And if you wanted to go to college, you had to get good grades in high school and do certain things and go through the test and all of that. And you there. But colleges became businesses. Colleges became vital to the government to re-educate people, or to educate them the way that they wanted to be educated, mostly towards the liberal end of the spectrum. They created degrees out of thin air for people to get degrees in, which once they got out of the university with a degree, there was nothing out there that they qualified for, that they could even go into, because basket weaving is non-existent or limited. So the students didn't spend a lot of time figuring out what degree they should get to be able to get a job and get into the workplace, to where maybe that degree meant something. Now, degrees don't mean a whole lot. You got a lot of four-year degree holders that can't find a job, or they don't want the job that's offered to them because it's beneath them. So we're in a very interesting place in our country right now, and there's got to be a correction, and that correction is not going to be comfortable, and it's probably going to be very uncomfortable when it actually occurs. And the divide between the haves and have-nots is going to get wider. And the have-nots are going to include probably the middle class and the upper middle class. And the haves are going to include the upper 0.5% of the income people in our country. All right. I heard a statistic the other day that the top 1% have more money than all of the 99% combined. That's a lot of money. I don't disparage anyone for making money or earning as much as they can. However, I do question companies who hire these CEOs and paying these exorbitant salaries to these people, and the bonuses and all of this other stuff. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me whether it's good for the shareholders. Because when you have a corporation and they're a publicly traded corporation, the people that should be making money on that corporation are the shareholders, the ones that invested their money into it to allow it to grow. But there's been so many loopholes created for companies now to where they can divert and not pay dividends and so on and so forth. I mean, it really does not make a lot of sense. So we've got some decisions to make about where we're at as a country and what we want our country to look like. There is no other country that is like the United States of America. Our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our system of government, although it's been bastardized and a lot of the rules have been overlooked and they're not enforced at all. And for people like me, people like maybe you watching or hearing this, does not make us happy. But what do? Well, our Constitution gives us the right to do a lot of things. Our Constitution, our government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And you've got a bunch of people who are losers that run for these offices and get elected because the qualified people are not running because they're busy running their life, working, running a business. Although I think that's changing a little bit, hopefully. But we have to be able to do something and take the charge back from our government and get it back to of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's not going to be an easy thing too, because once a person has power, once a group has power, and you see it in all the time in small towns or even cities with the boards that they have to run their city, the city councils. They want to exert a lot of power and tax and this, and it makes no sense. It's almost like a homeowners association, which to me, if anybody buys into a homeowners association, it makes, as far as I'm concerned, they're nuts. But anyway, we've got a lot of things to consider of where we're going to go. So now I'm going to talk about me and my family, what we do. We have a small farm. We raise animals, cows, chickens, goats, and they're for our consumption. We process cows to put in our freezer. We sell some of those cows to other people when they come into season, or when we get ready to process, if they want to buy a quarter of a side of beef or a half a side of beef or a full side or a full cow or whatever. That's what we do. Okay. One of the things that we did when we got our property is we wanted to be able to raise our own animals for our consumption. And we also wanted to be able to provide that to others locally here because it saves so much money. The other thing is when you do it yourself, when you raise your own animal, you appreciate that, what goes in to raise that animal, to feed that animal, to feed it correctly, to get what you want out of that animal, how you treat the animal. It's a very interesting thing. And then once you raise your own cow, and you put it in your freezer, we rarely go out to eat because the quality of what is out there just doesn't match what we have. The other thing is that as a carnivore, doing the carnivore way of eating, you realize that you go out to eat, they're feeding you bread and they're feeding you this and macaroni and all this processed food that makes people sick. And that's what, that's the other thing that causes us to pull back and say, look, we're not going to participate in that. And the small farms such as ours, and even the large farms, are under attack. They're under attack by the government. And some of them want us to not raise animals because they want the big outfits raising animals. And the unfortunate thing is like chickens. There's many chickens that are raised in our country that are shipped to China to be processed, to be packaged, and then they distribute them out back to our country. So you've got a ship that takes them over there and then brings them back and then distributes them out. Why would we do that? Why not just do it here in this country? Well, the reason being is because the government is shutting processing plants down. And if you've noticed, there's many processing plants for cattle, chickens, pork, pigs, that have experienced accidents, been blown up, burned to the ground. Say what you will, but it seems almost coincidence, I guess you could say, which I don't believe in coincidences, but we're being cycled out of that. And then you've got Bill Gates introducing fake meat, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Okay. But when you raise your own animals, even if you were just to get a few chickens and have eggs for yourself, I mean, once you have a fresh egg, a farm fresh egg, an egg from your chicken, you can tell the difference in those eggs, and there's a difference in the nutrient of those eggs. So it's time for people to get back, I think, to doing a little bit about them for themselves. Now, as a carnivore and following that way of eating, and don't eat vegetables, don't eat fruits, and there's a variety of reasons for that. I'm not going to go into those now, but we just don't. The other thing is the quality of life for the animals. If my wife had her way, the animals would get massages every day. Okay, I'm not quite there, but that's her. Okay. So, homesteading, raising your animals, it can contribute to a more sustainable lifestyle for a person because you're taking charge of that area of your life. It's just like when you switch to a carnivore diet, you're taking charge of your health. And as I will explain as this podcast go forward, you're going to see some things that are nothing short of amazing. You're going to hear about things that are nothing short of amazing. And plus, it's an emotional satisfaction. I mean, we find joy in caring for the animals. That when we go to the freezer and open it up, that animal is a result of our efforts, of our taking care of it, and making sure that it's fed correctly and quality. Okay, so that is it for this episode. This episode here comes to a close. I hope that you've enjoyed some of the things that I brought up, and it's going a little bit more comfortable for me getting into this, trying to figure out the best way to present things. I've got a lot of ideas and a lot of things that I'll be bringing to you, and hopefully in the near future I'll start doing interviews with people on the podcast, and that's going to allow things to open up a little bit. But if you've heard something here today that you've enjoyed, please let me know. If you've heard something here that you think that I could improve on, please let me know. I'm always open for critique and criticism. Just be careful because I'm emotionally unstable. I'm not, but I can take it. So anyway, be good, be real, and make good choices. Talk to you later. Bye.